Well, hello everybody. This is Margaret and you've reached the Boboleros podcast. Welcome. This is a podcast primarily about knitting, but also inspiration from the world of the classical arts, music, painting, fine arts, and random drippings from the brain pan. So welcome. It has been more than a minute since I've been able to podcast and be with you. I've missed you sorely. I hope you've been doing well and finding joy in your knitting. And I'm here to catch up with you. I've been knitting recently quite a bit, and I have some works in progress and some final objects to share, as well as a couple of knitting announcements, which I'd like to get out of the way from the get-go. So as you guys know, we are on the countdown to Rhinebeck. I am recording this on Sunday. Actually, I recorded yesterday, but some of my footage got lost, and so I have to re-record my opening one more time. But aside from that, it is still about 2 weeks away from Rhinebeck, and I don't know if you're going, but if you are, my goodness, isn't it exciting? It is just one of the best times of the year. Now, usually for the past 2 years, I've been vending and enjoying that tremendously at Cakepalooza, which is the Friday before Rhinebeck. And my yarn brand Boboleros was all slated to also be vending again this year, but I, Margaret, have dropped the ball. I confess I have not been able to get prepared enough for the show. So I was corresponding with Alyssa, and she graciously allowed me to maybe be present on a smaller scale. I don't know what that entails yet. We're trying to figure it out. So there's a chance I might still be there, maybe with a little table, or maybe not. But the good news is that I do plan on attending Rhinebeck to say hello to everybody and hopefully see you. So that is good news for me. And also a second piece of good news is that I know that many of you have been waiting for the launch of the CHOPIN cardigan and pullover pattern, and also have been inquiring about the special yarn which is used in that project. And I am happy to tell you that this Friday, October 10th, is the official launch, yes, of the pattern and the yarn. And I have just filmed a second video about that, which will be launching on Wednesday of this week. So stay tuned for that, where you'll learn more about the pattern and the assortment of colors that I've dyed up. And also stay tuned to my Instagram, where I'll be posting all week about the different yarn colors. And it's a dreamy pattern. I can't say enough about it. And I only say that because it was a very mysterious way that it all came to be. It just kind of happened, and I can't really say how it happened. It miraculously came together. And so, I really appreciate all the positive enthusiasm and excitement surrounding the launch of this pattern. And I apologize for my lateness, because I know I've said in September it would launch, but then it wasn't ready in September. And I think because it is going, and I was working with an amazing pattern editor, and so this is going to be a pattern which is going to have a wide variety of sizes. It's also got so many different options: a cardigan option, a pullover option, options regarding the types of sleeves you'd like, options regarding the type of fit you'd like, from a cinched at the waist fit, which is the way I originally designed it, to a more swingy kind of fit towards the waist, which is another option. So I am so excited to finally be able to share that with you, and it's this Friday. And I'll have amazing kits on boboleros.com, and I always do something surprise, like a little surprise for people that subscribe to my newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed and are interested, please go to boboleros.com and leave your email, and you'll be the first to know when maybe a sale drops or a surprise early entrance to shop begins. I like to have fun with it. And most of all, I like to thank and honor the people that have stayed with me all these years. So thank you so much. So yes, but another piece of news is that I will be doing a trunk show next month. And it will be at the Small Business Saturday, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And it'll be at a wonderful knitting store called Rabbit Row. And that is located in Corning, New York. Now, I'll tell you more about that a little bit later, but I just wanted to get that out of the way and let you know those things. So now, before we get to the knitting content, I'd just like to quickly just give you a personal report where I've been all these months, because I was always podcasting fairly regularly. At least, I tried, once a month, if not twice a month, but I have been out of the podcasting loop for months and months. So I know some you guys were really concerned, like, what happened to you, Margaret? And I apologize that I've been away so long. It was actually good things that happened. One of the things that happened, and it was just a real joy for me, was to release my book. As you might know, that I'm a classical pianist, and I've always been intrigued by the intersection of classical music, healing, and spirituality, and especially the classical music roots in the early church, and what's been lost when we fail to connect with this music, because it's got so many healing benefits. Everything from lowering cortisol levels, helping with stress, helping us relax and go into that parasympathetic rest and digest state, and quickly. Mozart, oh my goodness, like Mozart is almost a wonder drug, listening to Mozart's music. They did a study where they took blood samples from a series of people, and so they analyzed the blood, and then they played Mozart to the same people, and again took a sample of the blood after, and the blood had changed just from listening, and it had more beneficial elements in it. And so that's all science now is discovering this, because they could see how the brain reacts in real time, and truly the brain lights up. So this book is about exploring classical music and its healing benefits on the mind, body, and spirit. And it also has a musical album which I recorded of the music of Bach. I want to thank Leslie Friend. She is such an amazing friend to the knitting community, and also a friend like with a big F. She mentioned the book on her podcast, and many of you went ahead and inquired about it or even bought it, and I'm so grateful. I am so grateful to this community and this way that we can all kind of go and expand the conversation. It's always fun to talk about our knits, but yet there is so much more to what connects us. There's so much love in this community, and so anyway, very, very happy to be part of it. And so that took a lot of time for me, getting the book ready, and then all the music took over, to the point that I got an invitation to perform at Carnegie Hall in May 2026. So the bulk of my attention recently has been on music. Not to say that I haven't been knitting, but definitely my knitting mojo kicked back in, I would say, just in late July into August, and getting revved up for the fall. Another thing that happened was that my daughter Maya, who you might remember, she was my cohort my partner in crime when I first started the Boboleros podcast back in 2022. And back then she was still a college student. Well, she graduated and she hasn't been doing the podcast with me for a couple of years, well, most of the time. But I love the early episodes we had when she was willing to step in front of the camera and talk about her knits. Anyway, I thought she would be around after graduating college. At least we'd have the summer together to do things like go to the beach and generally gallivant, which is a term I've coined for just getting in the car, driving around aimlessly and seeing what adventures we stumble upon. Gallivanting has become a part of life for me and my kids. Whenever they come by, it's like, okay, let's gallivant. And it's pretty awesome not to have a plan and just to go rogue. Anyway, I was looking forward to a summer of gallivanting, and then suddenly she got a job. How does that happen? Well, it just happened, and the job was in upstate New York and about 4 hours from where we live. And so we had to quickly, within 2 weeks, get to know the area, find a place for her, get her situated, and all this stuff. So it was kind of like a rush to, for us as parents, it was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But for her, it was even more of like, what a transition. And anyway, she got a great job. She loves it. And she's now the meteorologist, one of the meteorologists for an NBC affiliate in Elmira, New York. And so she's on air and she does the weather broadcast. I have a little snippet of one of the types of broadcasts she did recently. I thought it was really cute and apropos for fall. So I'm going to share it here, just like a little bit of like a happy mom moment.
Fall is here, and while the changing leaves are beautiful, they could also make your commute trickier. Wet leaves in the road may not seem dangerous, but they're actually very slippery. If you come across this situation, then you'll want to drive the same way you would drive on ice. Slow down and keep extra distance between your car and the car in front of you. Keep an eye out for leaves when you park as well. Car engines and exhaust get very hot, so parking over a pile of leaves is a recipe for a fire. It's best to treat any leaf pile as a no parking sign. Stay in the know with the 18 Storm Team.
When you see a pile of leaves, consider that's a no parking sign. I never knew that. So anyhow, I now know not to park by leaves. So one of the wonderful things that happened when we were out exploring the area was finding a sweet town named Corning. Obviously, it's a huge place in terms of manufacturing, because the Corning, one of the top 10 I think American companies, they make everything now glass related, even like the glass on the iPhone and all sorts of technology, I think for the Hubble to space. Anyway, they're situated there in Corning, New York, and they have an amazing glass museum, other museums, adorable cafes, and they have knitting shops. And one of the ones that we've discovered is called Rabbit Row. And so I picked up a project there, and that's what kind of like kicked off my knitting reemergence, was that project, which I'm going to share in a bit. So yeah, so let's get started on the finished object. So I'm wearing the one that I just finished, and I couldn't be more excited about it. You have probably seen this because it's been exploding everywhere. And this is the Bow Shawl by Isabel Kraemer. And it is done in either a sport weight or a DK weight. Either is fine. I did mine in a kind of, well, sport weight. I'm going to say it is sport weight. And it just was a real labor of love. Let me take it off so you could see it more. I also did a video. I just shared it yesterday to my stories about blocking it, but with using steam, which was so fun to do, because you gotta listen for the sizzle. When that happens, then you get a beautiful fabric. I have been going crazy about houndstooth prints this year, this fall, and also the color rum raisin. I just love it. It's not a brown. It's not a red. It's somewhere in between. And yeah, so then it transitions. So it goes with cream and the rum raisin, and then it transitions into this very light peach color. It actually reads a little lighter than I wanted it to read. And I have hand dyed the yarn, and I decided to make kits for people that want to maybe duplicate this. But I made it a slight bit darker because I thought it would be better if it was just slightly more defined in that lighter pink peach zone. So I have to confess that as far as shawls go, I am not really a shawl knitter. But this project has convinced me that I do want to be. I really enjoyed this knit. Like once I got into the swing of it, memorized the pattern. You know what I did actually? I am not good at reading written patterns, and I have to make it into a chart. Otherwise, I make too many mistakes because I lose track of where I am, and the words, they're so, like you see the same terminology over and over. So I made my own little chart, which helped me so much. If you guys want that chart, I think I saved it as a little PDF for myself. If you want, if you're knitting it and you prefer to see the pattern that way, just get in touch with me. Either email me from boboleros.com or even DM me on Instagram, and I will try to give you that because it just made life so easy for me. And right away I was like, okay, I was really cruising. I did this in 2.5 weeks. So for me, that's pretty fast. Not that I'm a slow knitter, but I sometimes forget to knit if I'm overwhelmed with other stuff and don't have time, or it gets too late and I'm too tired. You know how it is. But I was pretty consistent and 100% monogamous with this when I knit it, and I really enjoyed it. It goes into a little bit of a ribbed border at the end, and I brought back that rum raisin color. I will say that I was highly motivated because I just celebrated my 25th anniversary, and as an anniversary gift, my husband got me a really beautiful purse, a handbag, which is the color of this kind of raisin, dark rum raisin. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need a shawl to go with the purse now. By the way, I have started a Substack, which if you're not familiar with Substack, it's a wonderful platform. It's free. You just can read the most interesting articles from all sorts of people. I started like I started to learn things I never knew before due to the quality of the writing that's on that platform. And so I said, I'm going to start a Substack because I like the way it looks. I'll be so honest with you. If it doesn't look pretty and beautiful, like I'm not interested. And Substack looks like a magazine. And I said, oh yeah, I want to write like as if I'm writing in a magazine. So that's why I started it. It was for the aesthetics, because I had a website and occasional blog, but I never liked doing it because it kind of looked not so inviting to the eye. But Substack is so inviting to the eye. So I wrote an article about different things. One of the things I wrote about recently was the 3 branches of music, and it's actually not boring. Not to say that like you might find it. I'm not saying that I wrote it well. I'm just saying that it's a fascinating topic because it's about what the Greeks knew about music, and that there are 3 types of music, and only one of them can we actually hear, and the other 2 are silent, but they affect us on a deep level. So I wrote about that. It's on the Substack. You could read that, and also this article of how, or like the story of how I married my husband after dating him only 2 weeks. We married like total strangers. It's pretty funny. Anyway, it's on my Substack, and you could go to margaretwasick.com. No, margaretwasick.substack.com. Anyway, I digress. So, yeah, so I got that present handbag. I wanted a shawl to match. I had to knit this quickly, and it was like, ah. But now I'm really excited to knit more shawls. So that is one of the first projects that I recently completed. I also got inspired to but dye some yarn to make kits in case any of you all are interested in making this shawl. And here are my colors. This is the set that I used for mine, and yeah, I went slightly more salmon on the contrast band. So the kit includes 2 skeins of the main colors and then the one contrast. So here's the one I used. It's on the website boboleros.com right now. It's option 1. I have 4 kit options. Okay. Another option I have is this one. I really love this one. And it's got, I'm crazy about this kind of limey green, yellow, and then of course aubergine and cream. So the aubergine and cream are the main colors, 2 skeins, and Detour is the contrast. And then another option I have, I saw some of the finished objects that people had done of the bao, and a couple of them included like 2 darker colors together, and I thought, wouldn't gray and black be very sophisticated together as the main body, and then as a contrast, cheeky, which is a pop of pink. How fun, right? So the last option is sharp and crisp. This is Baltic and cream. So these are the 2 main colors, and then pop it with this, which is Audrey's coat. So anyway, a lot of fun to knit this shawl, and it goes fast. It really does. And it's luxurious, and I just love it. Okay, moving on. The next thing I knit was actually for Maya, because once I heard that, well, I kind of assumed that the winters upstate New York might be a bit more harsh than they are here, and I was right. Then I went to a farmer's market near my house. Every Saturday they have this great farmer's market, and I discovered a great coffee. Like, I love coffee, and they have this truck that pulls up every Saturday, and I have to say, I've had coffee all over the place in my life, but I don't think I had a better cappuccino than it from that truck. And they are a local roaster. It's like a husband and wife, family owned business, and that's not even their full-time thing. They only do this on weekends. And I tell you, so their name is South Street Roasters, and they're based out in New Jersey. And I have to say, like, I went to their website, I said, what kind of alchemy is this in the coffee? And they write about the ratio. And I'm all about ratios. So when you just say the word ratio, and I'm like a dog in heat, I'm like, tell me more. I gotta know. And so there's this ratio, golden ratio of coffee to water that they talk about on the site. And it must be that, because I can't get enough of this coffee. But anyway, as I was getting my coffee, I noticed there was a vendor, a farm, that they had yarn and other things. And I thought, what kind of yarn is this? And I went to speak to them, and it turns out that they had alpaca farm. But then there was one skein that just stopped me in my tracks, stopped me in my bunny tracks. That's like a very bad segue, but I said, what is this? I picked it up. It was like literally glowing in my hand. It was so soft. It was like another dimension of fiber. And I said, what is this? And they said, oh, that's French Angora. And I said, what? And then she started showing me these pictures of these like gray French Angora rabbits that they have. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is beyond belief. And then I started to see all this like slight variegation of grays and like pearl, white, and then I don't know, a little beige. I said, what is happening here in this skein? And so, guys, I will tell you, I never spent so much money on one skein of yarn before. In fact, I've rarely spent that much money for a full sweater's worth of yarn, much less one skein. But I couldn't resist it. It was so yummy and decadent, and I thought, for my baby girl, like, I want her to be warm. So that was my justification. And here it is, okay? This is the shawl. It's called the BLT shawl. I think it's, I'll link her name. I think it's Christy McEwan is the designer. And I was recommended this yarn by the farm that had the booth. And they're called Humor Me Farm, by the way. They're based out of New Jersey. And oh man, it was one skein. So I realized this would not be a shawl, but more like a shawlette. But let me try to put it on just really quickly. It is creamy and delicious and wonderful and dreamy. And actually, I thought it was a little too small, and I thought Maya would be disappointed because, you know, we all want the big shawls. But this is so perfect for like throwing on underneath a blazer or a little jacket or whatever, a little puffer. It's just so much fun, and it's so warm, and it's just delectable and delicious. I obviously couldn't get enough of the process of knitting this. I didn't want it to end because it was so good. Now, I'm happy that I chose this pattern because it's so customizable, the BLT. You can make it as long as you'd like, as short as you'd like. It's up to you. And the only difference is you just change the amount of those triangles that it has, and that's it. And that's exactly what I needed because I really didn't know how much I'd get out of that yarn in terms of length of shawl. And I knew I would be playing a fierce game of yarn chicken, and it worked out perfectly. Actually, I bound off, I had maybe, I don't know, like a foot of yarn left. So it was like to a T. There was no real waste of yarn. It was just fantastic and delicious. And I was a little worried because Maya is sometimes sensitive to certain fibers, and I never asked her about Angora, and I thought hopefully it won't, you know, she won't have any adverse reaction. And no, it's all really great and really good. So yes, this is the BLT shawl, and it was just absolutely wonderful. Now I have one last finished object, which I'm going to talk about, but this is where the video from yesterday begins. And so I'm going to cut to that right now. And it's the Andrea Mowry Everyday Cowl. We wandered into Rabbit Row, and they had on the mannequin very interesting cowl. And I loved the color, and I loved the look of it. And it was the Andrea Mowry Everyday Cowl. And they also had a very special yarn. They're dyed just for their store. And it's called Plied Twists. I think that's the name of the dyer, Plied Twists. And this is the color Centerway Square. And this is spun in New Hampshire, hand dyed in Baltimore. And this color was like, it really got me because the browns, it has some light blue, it has a little bit of pink even. And it reminded me of Aurora Borealis or something. It literally is so iridescent and so cool. And I got 3 skeins for the project, And then I got an additional 2 skeins because I thought maybe I'll make a hat to match because I've been wanting matchy things. And so here it is. Here it is. Here is the cowl. I'm going to put it on. Hold on. I'm holding my microphone today because I don't want things to like rub and, you know, it sounds weird. Okay. Woo! There we go. All right. Ooh, how fun is that? I love it. I haven't put this on because I knit this like in July, and so I couldn't obviously have it on, but it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. I love the pattern, and I love the funky construction because you think, how in the world is this going to look? You know, it's like this funny kind of geometrical shape, but yet it works out somehow, some way. It is fun. And so I think I've got a gray vintage blazer. I'm thinking of pairing that with this and like jeans and having it ready to go like this, or even, you know, more casual, walking the dog. It's cold. You know, keeping the neck warm is a must because I think you lose cold from the head and the neck a lot. It's just one of my husband, Mark, ever since I met him, he's obsessed with not getting cold, like in the back, you know, like where your shirt tucks into your pants, that part, if it gets cold, forget it. He like, it's all crazy, you know. So when the kids were little, it was always about make sure that the back isn't, you know, exposed. Anyway, an aside. So yeah. So this is it. What more can I say about this knit? It was a lot more knitting than I thought, you know, because or maybe I just was so out of knitting for a while that I was like, I think this will take me a short amount of time. It took me longer than I thought. And it was just definitely more knitting than I thought it would be. But again, maybe it's just because I had not been knitting until this. So this was kind of one of my first jumpstart projects back. And I think it's great. What more is there to say? Except, great job. I don't really have too much familiarity with knitting cowls like this. The Andrea Mowry Night Shift. I always wanted to knit it. Never got around to it. I have the yarn for it. Never knit it. I should knit it, and I would like to knit it. Now that I have this cowl under my belt, I'm like, yeah, need more of those. Okay, last thing in the finished objects. I never actually showed you guys this, although I did post it on Instagram when I made it. And of course, you probably recognize it. It's the shrug from Shrug Season, Jackie Rose's pattern. And I have been obsessed with Burberry recently, Burberry stripes. And I made this one using my own hand-dyed yarn, and I created a stripe pattern that is not really in the Shrug Season, although I did use the numbers from Shrug Season, the cast-on numbers, and I did use the, what else did I use? Oh yeah, just the, you know, basic plot, you know, the pattern. The pattern, whatever, or structure. But as for the structure of the stripes and the ratios of the stripes, that is something that I created based on a vintage Burberry print. So I literally took that print, I measured it out. I'm a big believer in ratios. When you get the ratios right, you have everything right. This is my musical training about ratios. And, you know, I tune piano, my piano, not other people's piano, but just my piano, because I don't want to be responsible for strings breaking. But it's amazing. Like in the world of tuning instruments, you realize that ratios are divine. And so I wanted to use the divine ratios in Burberry because obviously it's beautiful to our eye and it's lasted, it's so many years. It's a timeless classic because of not only color and proportion, but also ratio, which has much to do with proportion. And I am pleased with how this came out. Absolutely 100% pleased. And it's one of those types of things that you could dress up or down. And I just wore it to the farmer's market with my jeans. And, you know, people always are like, oh, I love that. Where is that from? Blah, 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 blah. This, I also have kits in the shop, boboleros.com, if you want to knit one for yourself. It's a 4-color kit. I think it took 2. It's in DK. Wait, it took 2 skeins of this golden camel color and 1 skein each of the contrasts. And then you got the little Burberry orange, which is totally, totally cool. So yeah, so that's it for my finished objects. Now, I'm going to now go into whips, and then I'm going to just wrap it up with a couple of stories about places that I visited, yarn places, which you already heard about. Rabbit Row, you heard about Doylestown, but you know, I want to show you what I got in some of these, because I also went to Michigan for a family event, and I got to experience a yarn store that I've always loved through the Instagram account, and I got to actually meet the owner. So anyway, I'll tell you about that in a second, but let me show you some of my whips. Okay, I am super excited about this one. I literally started casting it on last night, so I really don't have much progress to show you, but you know, the other day Maya sent me, because she's started to do color work, my daughter Maya, and so she said, Mom, have you seen this halibut sweater by Caitlin Hunter? I said, yes, I always loved Caitlin's designs. And then she said, well, there's one now called the, is it King Salmon Light or something like this? In any case, she said, do you think I could do that color work? And she's working on a Caitlin Hunter pattern right now. I think it's the Bergman sweater. So I thought, you know, I love the idea of fish. And so she started watching, I think it's Young Folk Knits has a episode having to do with fish on knitwear and all the different patterns that exist. And how amazing is that, right? So she sends me a screenshot of someone's finished object, and it was cream colored with the halibut outline in this sort of limeish green. And you know, anything green has my number. You guys know that if you've been watching. So I said, who is this fabulous creature? And she's like, I don't know, it was featured on the Young Folks Knits. And so I started watching that, and then lo and behold, it was LA Knits. And I think LA Knits is Andrea, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I said, oh my goodness. So I go to her YouTube channel, I start watching all the things, and then I was literally like as if struck by thunderbolt. I click on her latest video where she has made her version of this pattern, which is Spun Flora by Wool and Pine Design. And goodness gracious, when I saw hers, I went crazy. And so I said, I immediately have to cast it on. I just cannot wait any longer. Do you guys ever get that where you're just like frenzy, like foaming at the mouth? Like, I need this now. I need this now. So yeah, so I do a quick stash dive, and I realized I had a whole bunch, or at least 3 skeins of this wonderful primrose yarn. And I don't remember the colorway. I don't have the tag, but it just had all these fantastic, like, it's like a dark licorice base and all these great colors in it, like orange, pink. And so I said, yeah, that will be the body. But I wanted to hold it with a strand of mohair in lace. And so I didn't have that in my stash, so I dyed it. So I dyed up this dark kind of blue And I think both of those for the body will be great. And then I said, I want to mimic, because Andrea said that part of what enhanced her version of that sweater was the fact that she had a thicker yarn. And I've had this experience once before where I was doing the knit along, where it was Gina Skin Cocaine and Leslie Friend and I were hosting a knit along, and we were all knitting the same sweater by Cheri. Oh, I forgot the name of it. But in any case, I was so off gauge. It was turning into a tent. It was huge. And I don't know what went wrong, but I was halfway through the body, and it was like for a refrigerator. It was so big. And then I thought, how do I salvage this? Because I wasn't going to rip back. No way. Because there was also mohair involved in it, like a strand of brushed mohair. So tinking back mohair, pulling back, no way. So I said, I have no place to go except forward. How do I rectify this? So it turned into the happiest accident. I just did something which I've coined violent decreasing. It should maybe be more like aggressive decreasing, but I called it a violent decrease. And so I went literally, if I had 200 stitches in one row, I decreased by knitting 2 together. And so brought everything down to 100, like in no time, like one row. And the happy accident was that 2 things. It got back to my size. Second thing, it was also creating this like little billowy effect. And then right away I went into rib, because I salvaged it thinking, okay, the rib will cinch it in, because I don't want to keep decreasing and then have holes in the fabric. And since I also had the strand of mohair, the mohair has this diffused effect, and it kind of covered the holes. So I already have had this experience of being way off gauge, too big, doing a violent decrease, and then going into rib to, cinch it together. And when I saw that she had a similar situation happen to her, I said, okay, we are sisters. We understand this predicament. And, my issue was the same. I used yarn which was way thicker than what the pattern suggested. And I think because Andrea said that for her contrast, she used Newton, and she doubled it. It created like more of a poof effect. But when you see the picture of hers, like I love that effect, because it looks like the color work is 3D. It's like pushed out. I said, I want to do something like that. So I happen to have some what do you call that? Like not spun yarn. It was natural color, and I dyed it. And I've been obsessed with certain shades of blue recently. And it took me so long to get this blue. It is so heavily layered of different shades. But when I finally got it, it's just kind of like the Blessed Mother blue. I don't know another way to say it. It's Blessed Mother Mary blue to me, because I have a statue since I was little of the Blessed Mother, and she's wearing a blue cloak, and it's this color. And I said, oh my gosh, this is it. So that's going to be the color work. And, I just started knitting a little bit. I had to think back because I don't know why. I was reading the wrong chart, not from my size. I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. But in any case, it's so little at this moment, but hopefully you could get an idea of where the two shall intertwine. So I cannot wait to get my hands on another color work object. So a knit, you know what I mean? It's been so long since I've done color work. So I am really, really excited about that. And then again, influenced by Andrea of LA Knits, I saw her video of knit objects from 2024. And I went crazy. She showed this other shawl. Now, I don't know what's happened to me. I've never really been a shawl knitter. I've never been a shawl person. But after making the Bao, I'm like, I think I might be a shawl person after all. So Andrea talked about making the Sunday morning shawl. And so, all right, sorry, I had to change my SD card. This is long. Okay, so yeah, I saw this knit that LA Knits did of the Sunday morning shawl, which is by Melissa Plulau. She used to be with Espace Tricot and now the owner of Sandra Yarn. Anyways, she's so stylish, so beautiful. And one of my favorite sweater patterns is a design of hers, which is the turtle dove. And I'm on my second turtle dove, which is a work in progress. I forgot to show it, but in any case, it's another black one, which I owned, and I don't know, it got lost. And so I needed one. It was one of my most worn, if not the most worn sweater. So in any case, I said, you know what? On the heels of the Bao, I said, I'm going to knit that shawl because it seems like a very versatile shawl. Now, I wanted to use the Sandra yarn for that because I was so curious about Sandra yarn. People rave about it. And when I was visiting Forever Yarn, Yen was also telling me, Yen, the store owner, was telling me how wonderful Sandra yarn is. And so I got 4 skeins of the DK, but I got it in just their natural base. So like a cream, but a white. And I don't know, I don't think I'm a real cream white person. And I couldn't imagine myself like being able to integrate into my wardrobe that color very easily because I like a little bit more color. And if I could get it to be green, even greater. So I did something kind of unorthodox. I had a color in mind and I decided to take the yarn that I had purchased because I spent a lot of money on it and I didn't want it to linger, and I couldn't really justify ordering new yarn just for the color. So I dyed it in the color that I desired, and here it is. It is this kind of khaki green, which I like. Again, the usual greens that I gravitate to are definitely emeralds. I love a good Kelly green, but I don't think that those shades are the most flattering for me because I've been analyzed as a soft autumn. But now I'm leaning more into the soft colors of autumn, and this is one of them. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to make a shawl, I want it to really be my color because it's obviously by your face, right? So I really love this. It's kind of a gilded gold green color. And then I also I had the halo mohair because I love holding 2 strands. Almost always, I will do that because I find it creates a much more luscious fabric that I love. So this is the halo I dyed to go with it. And oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's like got these ochre yellow gold kind of filigrees going with it. And I think the two together will be fantastic. And I have a coat for winter, which is sort of a sage green color. This will be a nice complement to it. So yeah, so I can't wait to cast that one on and get a feel for that yarn. And last but not least, my trip to Michigan was to a store called Woolly & Co. And I love their website, and I've always admired the knits and the aesthetic of Aviva, the owner. And I got to meet her live in the flesh over the summer, and it was so wonderful. She's lovely. She's so beautiful. And she was wearing the most knockout sweater, of course. It was summer. It was super hot, but she had an emerald green vest. Again, here we are with the greens, right? And it was cabled, and it was so good. I think it was a Hohi Locatelli pattern, if memory is serving me correctly. So I couldn't resist, even though my husband Mark was standing there, and he's kind of like the keeper of the yarn flame, and you cannot buy any more yarn, Margaret, because you have way too much yarn, and what are you going to do, and he's like that recently, because I've been buying a lot of books. So he's always like, when are you ever going to read all these books? Which is a good point. Very, very good point. Which is why I married him. Because if I was left to my own devices, I'd be living in a shoebox somewhere in a van down by the river. If anybody remembers that from Saturday Night Live. Okay. So she was wearing that vest, and I said, I really have to make the same thing. Now, I love this color. I don't care. Is it my color? I don't care. I'm going to make it, and I'm going to love it because I love this color. This is Wool Addicts by Lang Yarns, and this is actually a cotton. And I think it's called, it's a number 71819. And she held it it had some real glitter, and it was so cool. So she held it with a strand of this Concept by Katya. And this is number 10, Shiny Shades. Yes. And who doesn't want a little bling with their emerald, right? I want some emerald green bling. And she was so sweet. She threw in some cute little accessories, like added a little notebook, happy knitting it says. Some swag for knitting is always nice. A nail file. Who doesn't love that? And a pin, enamel pin, Woolly & Co. Anyway, if you ever get out by the Detroit area in Michigan and have a chance to visit Woolly & Co., it's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful store and lovely selection. And I just had the nicest time, and I got to meet someone that I always wanted to meet. So that's it for me. Okay, so for those that are going to Rhinebeck, hopefully I'll see you at Cakepalooza, just, as a, fellow attendee. I might be walking around Rhinebeck on Sunday, not Saturday, because I'm celebrating my 25th anniversary. So I can't go on Saturday, but Sunday, hopefully I will be there with my daughter Maya, and I can't wait to meet you. And if, you see me gallivanting there, please come up and say hello and have the best time. And I wish you amazing knitting. Stay tuned for another episode I'm releasing it on the CHOPIN cardigan and pullover, which is going to be released this week. Finally, it's been a year in the making, but I hope you'll find it well worth it. Well worth the wait. I sure love it. And it's the kind of knit for bringing things into a more harmonious zone, which I think all of us want and crave. It's a crazy time in the world, but thankfully we have our knitting to comfort us and to give us just a lot of inspiration. Of course, this community is doing all that. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your amazing comments and just your love and support. And I will see you on the next broadcast. Bye.